We have 123 people here right now, so we'll go ahead and get started. I will hand it over to our MC for the day, our Associate Dean, Kiki Edozie.
Good morning, everyone. Good morning. Welcome to day 2 of the 4th Biennial New England Women's Policy Conference. Our theme this year is The Time is Now: Gender, Justice, Anti-Racism, and Systemic Change. The event is hosted by the John W. McCormack Graduate School of Policy and Global Studies, the Center for Women and Politics, CWPP. I'd like to recognize once again our Dean, David Cash. You heard from him yesterday. And I'd like to also recognize and congratulate Dr. Laurie Uzziah Jefferson, the Director of the Center for Women and Politics. I'm a reader, Kiki Edozie. I am indeed the Associate Dean here at McCormack. I'm also a professor of global governance, and I'm also a co-chair of our college's Racial Equity Task Force. At McCormack, we are proud sponsors and collaborators of this year's conference. So wasn't yesterday's opening day just great? If we were in person, I think I'd hear a loud, round of applause for yesterday's event. So let's congratulate yesterday's participants, speakers, for really, a fantastic opening day. But I think today's event is even going to be greater, if possible. Well, here's a snapshot. We're going to begin with some opening remarks before we introduce our keynote speaker. Of course, today is the day of the, I say, big enchilada, the theme of this conference. We are going to be addressed by the great Congresswoman, Ayanna Pressley. She will be moderated and a discussant by Celie Blue. And then we have a lot of, great other speakers and panels. I'm just going to give you a quick snapshot of some of the themes of today's panels: policing women of color and LGBTQ and communities, low wage and essential workers. And our Ignite panel today is paths to political power. I will talk a little bit about breakout rooms and how to get into those panels a little bit later. But right now, I would like to speak to the the wonderful person who will be introducing Dr. Ayanna Pressley. And her name is Jill Ashton. I'd like to just give you a few remarks about Jill. She's a leader and an activist in the women's advancement community. Since 2009, she has served as the executive director of the Massachusetts Commission on the Status of Women. She's a graduate of the program for Women in Politics and Public Policy here at UMass Boston. And she now proudly serves as the vice chair of the Center's Advisory Board. Welcome, Jill, and over to you, Jill.
Thank you so much. Can everyone hear me okay?
Yes, we can.
Oh, great. Excellent. Thank you so much for having me today and for allowing me to offer some welcoming remarks. I am just so thrilled to be here. Again, welcome to the second day of the New England Women's Policy Conference, hosted by the Center for Women in Politics and Public Policy. As shared, my name is Jill Ashton, and I am the Executive Director of the Massachusetts Commission on the Status of Women. I am also the Vice Chair of the Center's External Advisory Board and have the pleasure to serve with our interim chair, Charlotte Golarici. And I am also a proud and grateful alum of the graduate program. As my colleague Maria Gonzalez Albuquerque yesterday said, there might be some folks that are disappointed that we can't be in person. but there are also a lot of opportunities in being able to connect in this way. And so I hope that we will all really lean into those opportunities and celebrate the opportunities for connections. My favorite part of this conference, and I attend a few, this is my favorite conference. And the reason it's my favorite conference is because the people in the room and the people in our virtual room today, those people who choose to attend, who choose to take time from very busy schedules, they're all there because they're excited and invested in the work of policy change that advances intersectional feminism. And it's just so powerful to feel that. Every time I've attended, I've had the pleasure to attend each of the previous 3 conferences. And every time I walked into that room, I could just feel, it was like electricity. It was so powerful. And I can feel it today. I hope the rest of you can feel it today. Certainly if you had the opportunity to participate in yesterday's discussions and breakout sessions, I imagine that you are feeling something similar to what I am feeling. Earlier, I said that I'm a proud alum of the Center's graduate program. And that's because I am able to point to that program as the foundation or the origin for all of my professional opportunities to have impact, I'll say it that way. And so I am always eager to participate in programming and events and support the center because it has enabled me to be able to be impactful in my community. And in a similar way, I can point to the conference, the very first conference that was hosted, as absolutely the first step on the road to success when the commission engaged in a campaign to pass the 2016 Equal Pay Act. We had at the commission been working on equal pay for quite some time without much success, without much movement. That conference, there was a woman who walked up to me and said, "I know who you are," and I didn't know who she was. And she says, "I would love to talk with you about equal pay." And she said, "I think there's someone else who's over at another organization working on some interesting things as well. We should get together." And so that moment is crystallized in my brain as the start of our success for that legislation. I hope that you'll also take the opportunity to see people in these breakout rooms, to see people in our plenary sessions, and to reach out to them, to share your contact information in the chat, to ask them questions, to invite them to engage. This work is really hard. It's hard, it's often under-resourced, it's often underappreciated, but we are undetermined because it's necessary. And also because of the power of our community. So I really want to take the opportunity to celebrate that, to celebrate each and every one of you for doing this work, and to invite you to reach out to others. I think the thing that we can take away from these conversations is that there are resources out there, and we are all interested in supporting this shared goal of advancing intersectional feminism. So thank you for the opportunity to speak today. I hope that you enjoy the day's conversation, and I am going to turn it back to, am I turning it back to Kiki or Lori?
Yes, you are. Thank you. Thank you, Jill. Those were great
you.
Opening comments, and thank you so much. I'm going to hand it over to the director of the Center for Women and Politics, and her name is Dr. Lori Jefferson. Lori.
Thank you thank you so much, Kiki. I have the pleasure now of introducing Celia Blue. I will say that Celia Blue is a very, very special person to me. She is currently the president and the CEO of the Massachusetts Women of Color Coalition, and she's also the deputy director and chief administrative officer for the Rhode Island Department of Human Services. And what is so wonderful about Celia is that she is a woman who does it all. She, again, is the CEO of Massachusetts Women of Color Coalition. She does her job, and she's serious and committed to women of color in Massachusetts in a way that I say is unequaled. So, Celia, I am just so happy that you're here today.
Thank you, Lori, for that introduction. It's nice to be a partner with the Center for Women of Politics and Public Policy, and also grateful to be a new member of the board and look forward to working with our esteemed Charlotte Goler-Ritchie, who's the chair, and so many other wonderful women that we have on the board. And we're looking forward to doing some fabulous things, continue to do more with you as a partner, Lori. Good morning, everyone. Thank you so much for being here with us today. Our leader of the squad is here in the house with us. Congresswoman Pressley, we are so honored to have you here with us today. We know that there is a lot of demand for your time, and we appreciate you remembering us here at home. I want you to know that last year, the Massachusetts Women of Color Coalition organized the Day of Action to stand in solidarity with you and your squad sisters to denounce the occupant of the White House, and had a petition signed by over 775 people. So we want you to know, you already know this, but we always have your back here at home. You are an inspiration, and we can't wait to hear from you today. Even though you are well known, I want to take a few moments to read a short bio that your staff has provided for us. Congresswoman Ayanna Pressley is an activist, a legislator, a survivor, and the first woman of color to be elected to Congress from the Commonwealth of Massachusetts. Throughout her career as a public servant, Congresswoman Pressley has fought to ensure that those closest to the pain are closest to the power, driving and informing policymaking. Throughout her first term in Congress, Congresswoman Pressley has been a champion for justice, reproductive justice, justice for immigrants, consumer justice, justice for Asian Americans, justice for workers, justice for survivors of sexual violence, and justice for the formerly and currently incarcerated. Currently, Congresswoman Pressley serves on two powerful congressional committees, the House Committee on Oversight and Reform and the House Committee on Financial Services, both of which have remained focused on legislatively addressing issues of care, concern, and consequence to the American people. Prior to being elected to Congress, she served on the Boston City Council for 8 years and was the first woman of color elected to the council in its 100th year history. Without further ado, I present you Congresswoman Pressley.
Thank you, Celia. Good morning. Wow, it is really glorious to be with all of you. In many ways, it feels full circle and like a homecoming. I can't see everyone on the gallery view, but I do want to acknowledge some people that I did see who have been really critical to my own journey. So, you know, Celia, thank you for being a sister in service, and thank you for your example and your many contributions. Jill, you know, good to be with you again at this, although it's a virtual table. I wish we could all be together, you know, in person. Charlotte Golar Ritchie has been an inspiration and a source of strength and a confidant and a mentor throughout these years, and I thank her. And I saw my sister Ann Bookman on here somewhere as well. And David, thank you for joining us. So, and if I did not name anyone who has played a role in my journey and you know, held my hand and offered counsel, please do know that it was an error of the head and not the heart. I am grateful for each and every one of you. And before I go any further, as someone whose stepfather is deaf, I do want to take a moment just to thank our interpreters for being with us this morning and for the role that you're playing. So again, it is glorious to be with all of you. It does feel very much like a homecoming. I had the honor previously of serving on the board for the Center for Women in Politics and Public Policy. And I always feel at home here, surrounded by brilliant women, by non-binary folks and allies from every walk of life and journey of movement building. You know, and I want to just hold space for, because I just have to be transparent about the moment we find ourselves in, for the collective pain in this room, as well as the collective power and the brilliance and the joy. You know, we have navigated these unprecedented times with the gravity of unprecedented hurt, a crisis within a crisis. And daily we are faced with painful reminders that women, and especially Black and brown women, are not valued, are not protected and supported in this country. And yet still we rise. We are the backbones of a nation that has not yet recognized our full humanity. I'm not sure if you can see it behind me, and the most important part of my bio is never included, but it's because I like to say to myself, and that is that I am my mother's child. May she rest in peace and power. And I had the blessing, the good fortune to grow up in a household with a mother who did not read me traditional bedtime stories as a child, but instead read me the speeches of Barbara Jordan and Shirley Chisholm. And I have, in a serendipitous sort of moment, having grown up with Shirley Chisholm's influence all around me, my office, Longworth 1108, was Shirley Chisholm's office. And so I have a painting of her behind me, and I keep her close to me always. And my favorite quote of hers is when she was asked of her legacy and how she wanted to be remembered. She said she simply wanted to be remembered as a Black woman who dared to be herself. And so I thank all of you for supporting me. You have emboldened me to do that very thing. And I'm taking up that space as my authentic self. But I hope that I'm also creating space, that we all are, for other women to do the same thing. You know, the thing is that women of color, we have been the preservers and defenders of democracy. We have been the truth tellers. We have been the justice seekers. We know when any woman is at the table, we shake the table. We call the question, and we don't ask permission to lead. We just do it. And it's past time that our contributions are recognized and the historic role that we have played, which has so often been rendered as a footnote, if it is acknowledged at all. So it's long overdue that our voices and our issues are centered, not only on the campaign trail, but in the very rooms where decisions are made long after the elections are over. All too often, the faces of those in the corridors of power do not reflect the faces of the folks doing the hard work of organizing and mobilizing day in and day out. And so I'm so proud and excited to see those who have been doing what my mother would call the work with a capital W, behind the scenes for a long time, running and winning and earning positions of power. So for the past 4 years, we have faced down a White House that has really encouraged and emboldened white supremacy and done lasting damage to our most vulnerable and marginalized communities. And as the Biden-Harris administration heads to the White House, and I have to acknowledge the significance of Kamala Harris there as our first woman, our first Black woman, our first AAPI woman, the first daughter of immigrants, the first historically Black college university graduate. You know, this year we marked the centennial of the 19th Amendment. And we know that Black women were allies, were accomplices in that fight. However, the same grace and equal opportunity was not extended to us until just 55 years ago. And so against the backdrop of this national reckoning on racial injustice, having just marked the centennial of the 19th Amendment, which we know excluded women and women of color and people of color, to have Kamala Harris in the White House, I think is a seat that we have earned for the role that we have played throughout history. And so as this administration heads to the White House, we really do face an inflection point, as well as an opportunity to truly build a more just and equitable nation. Right now, we find ourselves in the midst of a national reckoning, and that reckoning demands of us a reconstruction, a third reconstruction. And I'm enlisting all of you as community builders in that. And I am doing everything in my power in partnership with this new administration and with this new Congress to ensure that we are advancing bold policies that will meet the scale and scope of the crisis immediately before us, but also chart a new path, both a recovery and a reconstruction. The moment we find ourselves in is unprecedented. The dual public health and economic crises brought on by the COVID-19 pandemic, as well as the long overdue national reckoning on racial injustice and police brutality, have really laid bare and exacerbated the inequities and disparities and racial injustices that have persisted for generations. But the fact of the matter is that, again, these inequities, they're not new. And in fact, they're not naturally occurring. They were often legislated, codified in law. So what is new is that folks are no longer able to pretend that these disparities don't exist. And folks are moving with an urgency to do something about it. You know, yes, as women, and certainly as women of color, we know what it is to be marginalized and we know what it is to be oppressed. But our greatness has always been older than our oppression. So let that sink in.
I'm sorry, I just turned on this thing.
For centuries, we have stood in the gap as the preservers and defenders of our families, our communities, and our democracy. And this year is no different. From the front lines of this pandemic, from the healthcare workers and essential workers to the neighbors who have organized, it's been inspiring. The mutual aid and collective care that has emerged out of community in the midst of these 3 crises that women have been leading is nothing short of inspiring. We have taken care of each other in the face of an administration that has really left us on our own to fend for ourselves. So never forget, we are the nation builders. We are the table shakers. We are the leaders. If we show up in force, if we continue to organize and mobilize, we have the power to usher in bold, transformative policies that will fundamentally transform our society into one that is more equitable and just. A society where Breonna Taylor would be with us today, a society where dignified work is affirmed by a federal jobs guarantee, a Green New Deal to finally address the crisis of environmental racism, policies that actually meet the scale and scope of the hurt and harm that have been legislated on our communities for centuries. A new world, a just world is possible if we work for it, if we build it together. A world that replaces our oppression with liberation and our hurt with healing. To make that world a reality, we have to be precise and prescriptive in our policymaking. And that's why I say policy is my love language, because through policy change, we have the ability to achieve societal, systemic change. So as I close, I am calling on all of us to stay in the fight, to stand in our power, to fully embrace our joy. Don't forget about your joy, because this is a necessary act of self-preservation and resistance, and we must protect that joy at all costs. The embrace of a child, a walk in the crisp fall air, a moment of connection. We are worthy of all these moments of joy, big and small. It is understandable to sit in the heaviness of circumstances, but I want us to give ourselves permission to dream of what is possible and to be emboldened in that. We are, in fact, our ancestors' wildest dreams and the manifestation of generations of folks who dreamed of a world they couldn't yet see. So let us keep our eyes fixed on possibility. Let us move in power and in sisterhood. Thank you again for this powerful convening and for inviting me to sit at this virtual table. I hope that you will always count me as your sister in solidarity in the struggle and in joy. Have a great day.